Harris, I'm going to start by asking you a couple of questions. So your acting career, I'm sure this audience will be aware of it, is kind of on a steep trajectory, and I'm sure that it's keeping you really busy. So was directing always part of your plan? Was it always a kind of creative impulse that you had to do?
Yeah. Yeah, is a short answer. I think I was always sort of interested in making things. I didn't necessarily know what kind of format that would take. I was making these skateboard videos as a kid, and I would always, at a certain point, I tried to like introduce scenes into them to try to see if like, you know, a bit of drama, and everyone was a bit like, I was like, no, I don't want to do that. Go elsewhere and do it. And then, yeah, I started to make little short comedy things and then dramas. And then I guess I got to an age where embarrassment kicked in a bit. Do you know what I mean? Where you start to become like conscious and self-conscious of your, you start to curate yourself in a weird way.
Yeah.
And acting came along, and it almost offered itself in a more tangible way. You know, I was doing like youth theatre and blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, it was always something I wanted to do probably before. And then I looked at going to film school. It felt a bit too expensive and I don't know. And then as I got to 21, 22, I sort of decided to make the short that I'd been working on a while, which led to this. So, yeah, it felt like it was sort of simmering in the background, you know. Yeah.
And was the subject matter of Urchin, was that always going to be the story that you wanted to tell with your feature debut, or were there many other stories and this is the one that you kind of landed on?
No, I just started writing this one, and then I think I wasn't sure exactly kind of what the format would be or what the end goal would be. I just became interested in the character, the themes, and then we just developed it for a long time, trying to get it right. But I don't know what exactly led me to making this specifically. I think it was probably just an interest in the themes. Yeah, it's easy for me to sit here and come up with a kind of intelligent answer around what the genesis was, but in reality, I don't know, and you never really can pinpoint what that is. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to say. Yeah, there wasn't other ideas. You know, there was just one thing.
But you had some experience of homelessness and the charity work that you were doing, right? So it was a familiar kind of...
Yeah, and there was sort of people in my life that had been battling with addiction and things like that, and quite cyclical behaviour, and it's something I'd observed and watched and became quite, I guess, like fascinated and troubled by, like just the idea of how, no matter how advanced we tend to be, we can fall back into quite rudimentary design a lot of the time with behaviour. And so, yeah, the work I was doing was almost separate to it, but then it started to coincide with the work we were doing, and then Frank came on board and we were working quite closely with various different organisations and going into prisons and linking with different advisors. And I guess there was like the research side of it, and then there was just the side where I felt like I wanted to try and help in a small way. You know, I'm very reluctant to sit here and talk about it as if I'm like some saviour of it. It's a weird thing when people in the entertainment industry are like attaching themselves to causes. It feels a bit precarious, but yeah, this was something I cared about, and I'm glad to be able to have had the access into it, you know.
But it does feel like it fits into a really rich heritage of British cinema that takes on whichever social issue. I mean, it's been written about a lot, and it's an obvious thing to invoke the great Ken Loach. Mm-hmm. And also, when I first saw it, I couldn't stop thinking about Naked, the Mike Leigh film, because there's, you know, very strong central character who's similar kind of dynamics happening. I know you're a bit reluctant to sort of claim that, but obviously that sort of social realism thing is part of the film, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it was always important for us that we started that process, like just even the development process and the actual start of the film in a very factual, realistic way, like entering his world quite observationally, quite simply, and then it felt like we were afforded the opportunity to then depart and go elsewhere in terms of language and tone. And to me, it just felt like a story like this deserved levity and deserved humour as well. And I think like often the people that are dealing with the most severe circumstances can also be the most exuberant characters. And so it felt like to tie ourselves to every single form of fact, even in terms of like when you look at what a probation office looks like, it's, you know, not exactly like that. But I think in terms of, if we speak about cinema, I think we're allowed to depart certain confines of a genre or whatever.
And can I ask about the casting? Because Frank's performance is incredible and award-winning. And so, what was the process? What was the process for finding Frank?
Well, I'd seen Frank in a series that he did years ago, and I was much younger. We're a few years apart, so I was sort of just coming in to the industry, and I really admired it and thought I was just impressed by it. And then nothing happened, and then we sort of both have had a really great relationship with a cast director called Shaheen Baig, and Shaheen Baig was quite important in giving me a few minor roles and me starting out, and I think same with you, right?
Absolutely.
And so when we were casting, she just brought you in, and Frank just had the most interesting take on the character. It was by far the most, like, I don't know, investigated and nuanced version of it that we saw, and it was clear that we were kind of meeting on the same playing field in terms of the approach of the film. And yeah, he just came on and brought something entirely unique to it that I just know wouldn't have been there. And again, like, we were so lucky that throughout the process, and Frank came on really like 7 or 8 months before, and so it just meant that we had so much time to discover it together and kind of find it together, and he kind of gave himself to the world and to the film.
And Frank, was it quite a daunting prospect, because it's a role that the character demands like so many different aspects, more than most characters? You've got vulnerability, menace, humour, charm, struggles. Was that a kind of daunting thing to get your head around, trying to portray a character that kind of swings so wildly between all these different aspects?
Yeah, there was a dauntingness to it. I think whenever you are portraying a vulnerable character, you sort of feel the responsibility to do them justice. But you know, as Harris said, I came on quite early, and we built Mike together. Like, we were really had time to shoot things back and forth, and you know, Harris put me in touch with a lot of, as you said, we went to prisons together, and put me in touch with people. And I'd been working with a charity for a few years before having met Harris, so I knew a little bit about the world. Yeah, I think when dealing with addiction or vulnerability or all these kinds of themes, there is a responsibility, maybe a greater responsibility, I feel, to kind of do justice to that character. And when people don't have as much of a voice maybe as other people, you feel even more kind of responsible for it. But Harris and I really carried that together, and it was, as Harris said as well, there's so much joy in the film, and like, you know, people on the outskirts of society, or however you want to frame this character, or this, I think Harris has said in the past, like, when you get pushed to the edge of morality, or pushed to the edge of society, or of your own like thinking, or your own willpower, or your own body, you know, there's a kind of, that people have a lot of humour and a lot of joy within them as well, you know. And I think we really captured that in this film as well. So there was certainly a lot of physical and emotional beats that we wanted to achieve, but there was also a lot of joy and a lot of freedom in Mike, and yeah.
I was worried about Frank when we were shooting because you know, you probably don't want to talk about this, but he lost a huge amount of weight before we started filming, and it wasn't like, you're not like a method, but you were very much like giving yourself over to the role, and there was times where he's in every frame, and it was a very short shoot, and I could tell that you weren't really sleeping because you were thinking so much about what we were going to do the next day. So it was like, yeah, there was just so much care in there, and I think it shows. There's so much investment and love, and you know, so much of himself, and yeah, it's difficult to talk about without sounding pretentious, but it's worth noting.
Yeah, no, it's fine. And the my last question is kind of to do with acting alongside one another whilst you're trying to direct. And like you say, it was a short shoot, and Frank is carrying a lot already. How was that experience for you both?
What do you mean, acting in the
With each other.
But you know, wrestling. But you know, by the time me and Harris got to film it, like, we'd spent so much time talking about this stuff, and Harris reading all the other parts with me as we rehearsed, going into all these different research things together. That I mean, I was just, Harris didn't, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, was really apprehensive to be in the film at all. We had an actor pull out quite close to shooting. And I remember Harris coming to me and be like, "Do you know anyone?" I got one person in my... So Harris was very apprehensive to be in it, and but I think that it was just so... it was so right that you were in it. But I know, I mean, I'll let you speak about that because I don't want to overstep into things you don't want to talk about. But I'm right, as in you wanted to be behind the camera, right?
Yeah. I think weirdly the role did make sense because I kind of knew what it needed to be for the film, and I knew it was a small piece of the puzzle. I knew what the role meant for Mike's character and to the larger thing. So it was like, okay, I can do this without having to now worry about casting someone and finding the right person and expecting them to like take on the world and the experience of this character in a very short amount of time. It felt like a lot to ask of someone. And then, I don't know, we had fun like, as well. Like the scene in the square, for example, there was moments where we were like, I mean, it's weird to be acting and then have to step out of it. And I'm rolling around. I was like shouting in his ear, like, hit me hard. I was like, smack me now. And then I'd get him and be like, did you get that? Great. Should we turn around? You know, it's like, it is very...
So when we came to some of the scenes with Harris, and he had written that the character's wearing Y-fronts and also was riding...
Oh, yeah.
It was like the character was written that he was like riding... What's the other...
Mary was riding
Mary. And Harris came on, now he's the actor. He's like, I don't think we'll do the Y-fronts. I don't think he's going to ride Mary either.
Yeah.
So you don't
I've got some dignity, do you know what I mean? I've got some dignity.
You don't delegate the directing bit whilst you're performing. You still trying to kind of do both at the same time.
I mean, sort of. No, we would cut, and then I would watch it, and then our producer Urchin and DOP would give some thoughts, so I would watch it. But I just remember I kept wanting to like get through my stuff, and and I'd be like, two's good enough, and then we'll move on. And Archie would be like, it's okay, like you can do more. Like,
another one.
Yeah, I think you need another one. You know. It is interesting. A lot of people are asking and having different opinions. It's good. It's good. The end was always scripted like that. We were unsure whether it was going to work, and we were unsure whether the hope of it read enough. And we actually did shoot this additional potential ending, but it was crap, and we knew immediately. Yeah, we knew it was crap because when we edited it, me and the editor were like, "This is dreadful." Do you know what I mean? And we were like, "We're not even going to show this to anyone," so we just put the regular end back in. But and then the second question, I think when we were thinking about what Mike as a kind of narrator to the story, and as an unreliable narrator, we started to think, or at least I started to imagine those moments, the more surreal moments, it felt like we were able to depart the realism, because it's like if we're dealing with a kind of complicated mind, it felt like we were able to embrace the surreal a bit more. And the nature stuff, I've always felt like for Mike, trying to find like sanctity and calmness, there's always, with that, there's also a lot of confrontation, I find. Like if you're all of a sudden in a very peaceful place, it can also be very loud and destabilizing in your mind. And it felt like the journey out of prison, and I was always sure that I didn't want to go into prison and show that journey. Like as soon as I started writing that, it felt wrong. So yeah, it's yeah.
Well, Harris, Harris likes to. We did a lot of sort of guerrilla filmmaking. We did a lot of stuff being out in London. I always knew before coming to work that Harris was open to inspiration. So if we were in a location and I knew that next to that location there might be, something else, I always was aware that Harris might suddenly want to incorporate other things. And so it was always exciting for me coming into work as an actor, because it just felt like there was so much potential for anything, but I mean that was my experience, that we were kind of we'd also not rehearsed a lot, but we knew what we wanted to do. I knew what Harris wanted to do, I knew what I needed to do, and we knew that like we could trust each other, and we could push things this way and that way, and if it didn't work, it didn't work. So I mean, I don't know. That was my experience of things. What you?
Yeah, no, it's like that's it. I mean, it felt like a combination of things. We did do a lot of rehearsal, and I think that kind of enabled us to find more stuff on the day as well, and not be trying to look for too much or discover it in the moment. And then also there was a combination of like the street stuff was very documentary style. Frank had a radio, and we would be on like quite a long lens or up in a building or something. And then when we were in locations, it was more specific, and there was longer shots with dollies and
absolutely
quite specific things. But then it also just meant that, I don't know, Frank, if we had a wider frame, Frank could kind of do anything. We weren't telling him, you have to stand here, do this. I don't know, we weren't like being too specific with blocking, but there was like, this was your limit.
Absolutely.
And then you knew that there was a certain amount of freedom within it.
Absolutely. But I there's a memory I have of your direction, which I hope you don't mind me giving these lovely people an insight into. But I remember one of the final scenes, me and Megan on the beach, and we were building this thing. And I remember Jose had a sort of idea of setting up a shot somewhere else. And I remember me and Megan were just there doing the thing in between takes. And I remember Harris was just watching us like this. And I remember Jose coming over and being like, should we start to the dirt? And Harris was just like, no, I think let's move everything here, And without really saying much to Megan and I, they just kind of moved the whole set up, and then we just shot the scene there. So it was this kind of attention to what's alive right now that I think gives you that feeling, I think.
Yeah, the troll doll that was just something didn't you bring it in, Archie? I don't know. Someone brought it in and it just looked good. I wish there was more. It did look a bit like Frank's hair at one point.
Yeah.
Maybe we should say that's a little motif. No, I mean, the interesting thing about the restorative justice stuff is when I was talking to people that work in that field, and I think probably people that work in that field aren't going to like the depiction of it, because it doesn't necessarily come off well for them. But I think I never wanted to blame the institution on any level. I wanted it to be about a misciting in someone's sort of readiness for accountability. And I think the idea that Mike has almost lied to himself or concealed his own sense of understanding of the event was interesting to me. And then I was reading lots about trauma and how what that can do to the brain and the mind, and how we can, you know, ultimately cover stuff up and put it in a little box and then kind of forget where that box is until something happens at times. That's a really like kind of butchering the science behind it, but it was interesting to me about consequence, and to see how we played with the idea of consequence and Mike's understanding of his own violence, you know, like being confronted with his own violence, and when is someone ready for that? When is someone ready to take accountability for it and move past it in a way that feels accepting and not self-hating? So yeah, it's a delicate theme, and it felt, it was tricky. It was tricky.
Yeah, I agree with Harris. I would just add also, you know, desperation has its own language. You know, poverty has its own language. So I just remember when I was working on that scene, when we were building up to it, and Harris and I were talking a lot about, I mean, he's playing the cards he's got, you know? I mean, in his head, this fucking guy, he's got money, you know, he's got a nice watch, he's gonna go home to his life, you know? Where's Mike gonna go? I mean, fuck him, you know? I don't think that, but Mike thought that, you know? And then when we did the restorative justice scene, again, there was that thing. I found that scene quite confusing. I remember saying to Harris, like, what do you want from this? Like, because you know, and I remember Harris just saying, just play it for real, you know? Just you don't need to. It's almost like I was trying to think, like, is this the moment he has a big breakdown, or is this the moment that he apologizes, or we see that he doesn't care? And testament to Harris, he always wants a much more nuanced story told. So what can you say? Yeah, as you said, you make mistakes, and we try to move on from them. But I think you get to know people, and people who come from certain difficulties maybe have certain ways of seeing the world, and they play the cards they've got. So yeah, it's a tricky one.
It's very much the kind of, in my reading, very much the sort of pivotal scene in the film as well. It sort of, it really sits kind of in the middle of
absolutely.
that film.
And to reiterate, I don't think fucking, but I remember Mike. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but also, just to finish that off, there is also something about the way that Simon responds and comes in with a really like kind, pragmatic approach. Like, hey man, I just wanted to let you know what this did to me, and the way it affected me. And
I'm back in the scene.
Yeah, sorry.
Too much method.
Sorry, no, go on, Harris.
No, that was it. That was it. And I think it was just interesting to see what that did to each other's kind of truths of the scene.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
There was, I mean, London Fields was cool because I'd imagined that scene there for so long, and it felt like a real effort to get that right, and a lot of time and a lot of trust built with certain individuals and logistics and different cameras. So that was a cool day. The rooftop was interesting.
It was nice, yeah.
The rooftop was interesting. Have you got any favourites?
Rooftop was nice. The V&A, I liked the V&A.
It was all very close to your house.
It was all very close.
In terms of convenience.
I mean, it was beautiful. That location on the beach is beautiful. Where was
Yeah.
that?
That was in like Enfield or something.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the film is released, I think it's next Friday, the 3rd of October. Please do tell your friends. Go online, make a fuss about it on social media if you have it.
And if you don't get it, I'm joking.
And if you don't get it, yeah, let's give it a boost. It is going to be showing here at the BFI, but we've got the small matter of the London Film Festival in between. So after LFF, if you and your friends want to see it again, you can come back here and watch it in the cinemas here. But please join me in thanking Harris Dickinson and Frank Dillane. Thank you.